Hello and welcome. Oh, wait. There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is January 24th, 2023, and I am Anthony, and today we are chatting with the Paragon of Style, the Guru of Guile. It is, of course, the 2022 Love Pro Wrestling Manager of the Year, Thaddeus Archer III. Got to represent I'm a TA3 guy shirt going on here, which I picked up like 2 years ago, something like that. Been around here for a little bit of a time now, but I'm really excited to chat with him. I've been wanting to get him on here for a long time here. Me and Thad have like very similar interests when it comes to things. Like I feel like we grew up very similar, and we had a lot of the same tastes in movies and entertainment. And every time we get to chat with him, it's always a really great time. So we're gonna be chatting with him here today about his life in wrestling and what he's got planned, and about everything like in between. I don't know. I'm almost scatterbrained right now, but that's totally okay. We're going to get him in here in just a minute. If you guys have any questions, remember to put them in the chat. And of course, we will be able to pull the questions up and put them on. It is a bit of a fun, nice night. A lot of cool stuff happening in the world of wrestling right now. I'm not going to lie. So I'm very excited for this week. We're going to be talking a little bit about his show that's going to be coming on this Friday, Love Pro Wrestling. That's going to be happening in Edmonton at the South Edmonton Common Rec Room this Friday, which I'm very excited for. But why talk about him? Why just sit here and listen to me? Let's get him in here. Let's actually chat with the man, the myth, the legend, Thaddeus Archer III, if he's all good to go. Let's just see. Hold on a sec. He is currently frozen to me. Let's just see if this works. On. Oh, and then I can hear him, but I think his camera's frozen. So we'll just give him a second. I'll just send him a message and we'll make sure it's all working here. Hey, is your cam frozen? All right, should be fine. We'll figure this out here in just a second. All right, well, let's start with this one while we're coming in here. Hello from Winnipeg. May all the wrestlers... Okay, let's pull this up here. Hello from Winnipeg. May all wrestlers enjoy U-Time wrestling, and remember, dreams do come true. Work hard. Don't waste time. Have a positive mindset. Remember, what goes around comes around. These are all very good points. Thank you there, Uncle... What did you say it was? Uncle Louie. Uncle Louie, the millwright. Oh my gosh, it's so long it kind of cuts out here. I'm seeing if I can find it over here. Oh, Uncle Louie, the Millwright by Alan Sidine. I think I got that right. I hope I did that one right. But we'll see here just a second. I've sent a message off to Thaddeus. He's probably just taking a look here. He's restarting. We'll get it sorted. Thank you guys. You're very welcome. I guess we can talk a little bit about what's going on while we wait for Thaddeus here and make sure everything looks good on his end, because it does look like it's a little bit frozen at this moment, but I'm just waiting in on his message. So let's talk a little bit about this. So this Thursday here, if you're in the Calgary area, Big Vision Wrestling is going to be putting on their first ever show, which I'm very excited for. They're bringing in some pretty big names like Warhorse and Camille. What's going on? It was fine. Hold on. Oh, wait, he said something to me. Hold on. What did he say? It was fine when you had me up. Was it? It looked frozen to me. Hold on. I can hear you. Hello?
Hey,
I can hear you.
I can see me fine.
Can you see me fine? Okay,
yeah,
on my end, I can't see me fine.
No lag.
Can you try disconnecting and then just reconnecting super quick? Maybe it's just a weird connection thing.
Sure. Give me a moment there.
Perfect. We'll see. Hopefully that'll work. That was probably a me thing, but if I disconnect and reconnect, we're going to have to restart the stream. But yeah, so that's going to be really fun this Thursday. So I'm going to be there, and I'm very excited for it. I know. Oh, there he is. Perfect. Let's go. All right. It works. Hey, I guess this works. Thaddeus, thank you so much for joining me here today. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm very good.
First off, I just have to say once again, as I always say every time I see you, you're the best dressed man in Alberta. This is what a suit.
Yeah, you know, my daughter actually picked this out for me, and then I realized that my backdrop is me wearing the suit. So I'm just like, I'm the guy that wears green with the green screen, essentially.
Very space oriented, I think, is what it is. But
now we're losing you on sound.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what's going on right
here
now. This is having it. You know what's really funny? It's just because like I can see you on this screen over here, so I know it's working, but this screen
I
here
have lost
is not
the
working.
sound.
Oh, he's gone. We have lost Thaddeus.
Let's try this one more time.
We have lost Thaddeus. It's going to be a fun day, guys. That's fine. Well, it's cool. This is what it's all about. We get this going. Anyways, this part gets cut out of the YouTube post anyways. You guys get all the cool behind the scenes stuff that's going on right now. It'll be fine. We'll figure that out. Also, one thing to note, you can see him. I could see him too. It was weird. Like on this screen, I could see him and I could hear him just fine, but he could not see me. The only way to watch. Hey, JJ, much love to all of you guys here. Everybody who's tuning in today. I'm very sad that I can't watch AEW tomorrow. I have a prior commitment after work that I have to go to. And I'm definitely going to be DVRing it because, of course, they did announce today that Mark Briscoe is going to have a match against Jay Lethal. And it's going to be on TV, which I'm very excited for because, you know, passing of Jay. And it's been very hard on a lot of people. So it'll be really great to see Mark do that, especially because it's going to be Jay Briscoe's birthday tomorrow. So this will be in honor of his 39th, I think it was. Too young, man. Way too young to pass. That's for sure. But yeah, so that was really sad. Well, hopefully we'll look it up here in just a moment. You know, it's funny because like I always do this every time before we start a show. It's like 10, 15 minutes before we get people in. We make sure that everything works fine. Everything just fine. Hong Kong. Yo, Goose. We got Kyle Sean here, the Canadian Goose. How you doing, man? Great to hear from you. It's been a while. I have to get Goose back on here one of these days as well. Here's the thing. I have so many people that I need to interview. I don't give myself enough time. And because of my work rotation, sometimes I can't do it on a Tuesday. So I have to skip a week here and there. But it's all going to get a little bit better. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe here over the next couple of weeks. So this Thursday is going to be a huge one. Like I was saying, that's going to be the Big Vision Wrestling show that's going to be going on here in Calgary, which I'm very excited for. My computer froze. Okay, no worries. That's totally fine. I'll just send him a message. He said his computer froze. No worries. Never happened restarting. No worries. It's all good. It's all good. We can start again. That's totally fine. There you go. But yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so and then Friday, of course, Edmonton, they're having their big show there up at LPW for I want to say it's probably around like 7 o'clock. I think usually what it is. I have to go up to more LPW shows. It's one of the things I'm going to be talking to Thaddeus about because I think over the last year, now that LPW has been going for about a year and they're doing fantastic work, by the way. I have to give a huge shout out to LPW Love Pro Wrestling, ran over by Spencer Love there. Like the guy is running it like a beast. His social media is always on fire. He's always got content going. He's always got a show planned. He's always got content going out and telling cool stories. So LPW has been doing fantastic work up there. I'd love to see that. Happy to jump whenever, champ. Thank you, buddy. I'm glad to hear that. It's real. You know what? Here's another thing too. Over the last couple of, well, especially since really the beginning of COVID, but you know, even especially the more of the last couple of months, I have not had the opportunity to go to shows like the way I wanted to. And my daughter's also at that prime age where everything is chaos and she needs my focus pretty much like all the time. So it's been harder to go out to shows, but it's one of the things that I've planned on this year. It's kind of like my what's the word I'm looking for? New Year's resolutions. That's the one that I'm going to be going out to more shows and everything like that. It's going to be really fun. Check your Twitter soon. I'm in need of another shipment of goodies if possible. Oh, absolutely. I didn't realize you had sent me a message. I have to check my Jupiter Vision Twitter more. I don't know why. I just never checked that one. I'm just always sitting on WrestleSode. So every time I got to take a look at that. But yeah, absolutely. We got to get you some coffee crisp there, JJ. EPK! The Destroyer of Doors and Buttholes has arrived. Great to see everybody. I have to stream more. I miss everybody, especially in these moments because I've been doing everything when it comes to like the stream and like WrestleSode and stuff, but I haven't been doing like me. Not yet soon. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like I haven't been like hanging out and actually just chatting with people in the chat time to time. I really miss it. I really gotta start doing that again. But yeah, start lining up some questions here for Thaddeus. Today I am out without a mod. Shout had a work commitment that he had to go to. You selling gimmick via Twitter? Yeah, man. You selling gimmick? Wait, which one am I saying? Am I selling gimmick? I don't know. Maybe I'm just silly right now. My brain does not work. I have had a long day. Hey, thank you for the follow, Dustin. Yeah, Thaddeus will be back here in just a second. His computer crashed. I had a long day. My daughter has been sick for like the last 2 days, and it's like exhausting. But that's okay. I got a week of wrestling pretty much ahead of me because I'm going to be helping do this up tomorrow night for Big Vision Wrestling, and then it's going to be on Thursday, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to enjoy some good wrestling, and I'm very excited for this. Yo, Mason! Hands here, everybody. Man, everybody's like, oh my God, it's me. It's me. I know. I don't talk. I don't come in here. I don't talk enough. I don't stream enough. But I really want to change that. I did say that on the last one that I do want to change some stuff. If any of you played Vampire Survivors, I'm doing great. I'm just busy and life is just crazy, insanity. If any of you played Vampire Survivors, that's like the thing I've been doing kind of like in my free time when I've got like 10, 15 minutes. That game is hella addictive. Holy crap. Oh my God. I play that for like 10 or 15 minutes and I have unlocked. I mean, I know this is for Thaddeus and everybody's just kind of tuning in right now, but we're just waiting for Thaddeus to return. I have unlocked, I think there's 148 unlocks in that game, and I have 138 out of 148 unlocked. I have beaten the game. I have killed the Reaper. I can go like nonstop, essentially. I just kill everything in that game. I also have neighbors. So I have some relatively new neighbors. They only moved in a couple of months ago, but they got a dog that's a rescue. Sweet, cute little dog. But my God, when it gets outside, it does not stop barking. It just barks all day. Ugh. Hey, he's back. All right. Let's see if this will work. Let's give him, you get the thumbs up here? We good? Welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
Technology. I don't know what's going on with my computer here.
No, that's okay. I mean, we got plenty of time. This is very casual anyways, right? Plus, the power of post-production and editing makes everything really nice and easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back up. But first up, how you doing today, man? How have you been?
Good. Just preparing for this Friday. Lots of stuff on the go. Yeah, Spencer was just on CBC radio this afternoon. So
oh, wow, I didn't actually hear about that. That's amazing. Just promoting.
Yeah, I think he just threw out a link. We were waiting on CBC to put up like a little soundbite or little cut of it. But yeah, no, CBC contacted him, heard about the sold out show, wanted to have him on. So
that's amazing. Like I was saying just while you were doing a restart there that you guys up in Edmonton and LPW have been doing some amazing work, and just like the year that you guys have put in and all the cool stories and matches and the fact that you stayed consistent and that your social media game is nice and strong. Just very proud of everything you guys are doing out there in Edmonton.
Yeah, we work together. Like there's, a core group of us. You have Gavin with production. You have, of course, Spencer, myself. You have Thomas, who's doing all the camera switching during the live stream and everything like that. You have Ben, our chief official, essentially. Everybody all working together. Of course, MRB, our champion. It's just this like perfect group of people that just understand that we're all very driven and we want to put out the best product, not just for Alberta, but like to bring eyes back to Alberta, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean it's really great. I've had the fortune of I think being up for the last or for about 3 shows over the course of the last year. I live too far, but I think I've had the luck of going up for like about 3 different shows for LPW, and every time I go, it's just such a blast. You guys have so much fun, and you guys put on such great shows, and I really love the venue as well. It's like nicely located, and like you just need to take a break and you need to leave the venue for 5 minutes. There's literally everything around you that you'd ever need, and then you just come right back in. So.
Yeah, it's a hell getting in and out of that area. It's well known in Edmonton. Like South Common is a bit of a, it's a trap, but once you're in there, it's great. So,
as a Calgarian, I'm pretty sure that all of Edmonton feels like a trap at times. You know, it's like you get in, like I just want to get out.
Don't have to worry about this quadrant crap up here, right? So,
what is? Can I ask you this? This is a question I've always had for Edmonton. What is with the fact that you guys break your quadrant? I think like everything is the northwest, or what is that?
Essentially, the whole city's the northwest.
Yeah.
And then, with the sprawl, they added a southwest, which I feel just confuses things. Basically, it's just one, like left to right, up to down streets, Aves, from 1 Ave to 200 and whatever Ave or street and back and forth. It makes sense. But yeah, the whole northwest thing, like for certain things for my address, I have to include northwest, for it to work on like shipping and different things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely understand. Calgary's got its own problems, but at least it breaks the grid up like pretty okay. I mean, it's a little high on the south, but I mean, other than that, it's not too bad. But I mean, besides like the rivalry that Calgary and Edmonton have, I have to straight up just first up say I am so jealous that Calgary does not have a northern chicken.
And we have 2 now.
Do you have 2 now?
Yeah, they opened the second one right by the stadium, or not the stadium, but the new Rogers Arena downtown. So they're like a stone's throw. Like when I went to Raw, when we had Raw up here, I just walked down and had dinner there before and walked a couple blocks north, and Yeah, they're doing quite well for themselves. Matt's killing it. It's a lot of work, but it's a product. I mean, a brand, everything about it. You've been there, you know what it's like.
Oh God! Thank you for all the food recommendations, by the way, because like I don't know a Twitter critic when it comes to food that I trust more than you, and especially when it comes to food in Edmonton, right?
And I don't think I'm a critic. I'm more of just a supporter. Like,
yeah,
I
you're
don't
more like a promoter of food.
Yeah, I don't like to. I don't know. I don't like to knock on small business because I may not like it. Well, I just won't talk about it, right? So
yeah, if you got nothing nice to say, just don't say anything at all.
Don't say it at all, unless it's about wrestlers in the ring and that sort of stuff. So
right, of course. Well, that brings us up to some pretty good parts now. Obviously, especially lately, you have really come across. At least in Western Canada, it's probably one of the top managers across all of Western Canada when it comes to wrestling, in my opinion. I have now traveled multiple provinces. I have gone to so many different promotions and their indie shows, and I can always say that whenever I get to see Thaddeus on a show, I get super excited and hyped because usually, not only are you the best dressed person there, but you're going to put on a great promo, and you can take a bump if you need to, and it's always a lot of fun. No offense to you, but
yeah, buddy's getting old for that, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen you get like choke slammed into like barbed wire through a table and stuff. Like, you just might as well be
barbed wire, thumbtacks, table, you name it.
Well, we've seen that there. But how does it all start here for Thaddeus? Obviously, you didn't start off as like the tongue slashing manager that you are these days. Like, where did your love of wrestling begin?
So everybody always asks, like, when's the moment that you remember wrestling? And I mean, for me, it's just a vague recollection of Stampede Wrestling Saturday morning, because it was like Maple Leaf Wrestling. You had Stampede, and then you had WWF at the time. And it's a vague recollection of like this dingy looking, arena with these guys fighting. I don't remember who or anything of that nature. But then as time went on, and I got to see the WWF as well, of course, that kind of drew me more as a kid, being more colorful, Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania, and everything like that. And then as sort of time went on and I grew into it, I started finding like it was Jake the Snake Roberts really all of a sudden was like, he's a bad guy, but I really like watching him talk. I like watching his promos. I like the other guys that are screaming like Hulk and Warrior, but like there's something about Jake. And then there was something about Bobby the Brain Heenan. And, I started slowly kind of becoming a fan of both. And I just always, from there was a wrestling fan. I didn't celebrate it as much. I've sort of told people this before, but my dad hated wrestling. He would give me a hard time for watching it. And, he'd say, how can you watch those guys fake fight? And I'd say, well, how can you watch a car drive around in circles for 4 hours on a Sunday morning? And, but nonetheless, it sort of was always like my dirty little secret. I didn't really I had a few friends I talked about it with, but I didn't really, blossom into being a wrestling fan or even going to a live show until I was an adult and I moved to Edmonton.
Oh, wow. So it was really kind of more like a later in life thing where you really started to you liked it as a kid, but like,
and I watched it
really.
Yeah, like Monday Night Wars, I was there for all of that. I remember my dad getting cable and getting TBS and realizing like, oh, there's WCW. What is this? And I got like a free Clash of Champions pay-per-view, which he'd never buy me a pay-per-view, but I could watch a free pay-per-view live on TV. And I just, I would soak in everything. And of course, he's a big computer guy. So once we had internet and like the very dial-up internet, I was looking up everything I could. I was, once we could download stuff, I was trying to get ECW. I remember like staying up late at night trying to get clips of ECW matches because we couldn't get it up here in Canada. And yeah.
When you grew up, so then I guess you started off as a WWF kid, and then you said you kind of like also started to tune into WCW.
Yeah. I was definitely like grew up WWF and watching Stampede. It was, I think at that point in time, it was just the reruns they were showing. Right. And then I found myself drawn more probably through to WCW. I don't know what it was about WCW. Kind of had like a bit of campiness to it. Maybe it was just something different, but I miss WCW. I miss WCW so bad. Like,
especially like the heydays and stuff, you know what I mean? Like 98 to or 97, I would even say to like 2000, before the finger poke of doom, essentially. Like in that era, it was like just so beautiful.
Oh, it's like in like Regal when he was doing the Blue Bloods, and there were so many like great vignettes. I remember like Kevin Sullivan and Dave, it was like Mice and Men basically, had a tag team partner that was like, they were essentially like Mice and Men or of Mice and Men. Yeah. Essentially, Evad, which was Dave backwards, was George, and it just I don't know. It just there was like there was just maybe a little more story to it. I've always been drawn to like the action I love, don't get me wrong, but I've always been drawn to promos and vignettes. And you can tell that with the Archer reports and I talk all the time. But yeah, so like the story part, the that I was drawn to more, and I found just WCW maybe did that a little better than WWF, but
I can probably agree with that, honestly. When you go back, especially because I grew up a WWF kid, so I was really kind of like the evil WCW. Like, I'm like, I didn't trust watching it. And like, as weird as it is, like, because I loved people like Sting and I really wanted to watch them, but I had chosen my side and I was just a stupid kid. So I had to go back as an adult and kind of watch all this old WCW stuff and go like, oh crap, like I think I chose wrong at like certain times in my childhood, because I'm like, a lot of great stuff came out of WCW, and especially like promos as vignettes. The cruiserweight division in WCW was just absolutely insane. Like, it just, oh man. I'm so sad that I had to wait to become an adult and go back and watch that, because I made a mistake.
Yeah, it's funny because when it came to comic books, I was a Marvel guy. There was no DC. Screw DC. But when it came to wrestling, the world was my always, like, I drank it all in, and that's kind of how I am in life. Like, when I like something, I will read incessantly about it, learn about it, and that was wrestling always for me. There wasn't wrestling I wouldn't watch.
So if you saw it on TV kind of a thing, you would be like, stop what you're doing. We got wrestling to watch. Doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah, I remember when Wrestling Society X came out on MTV and watching that. And it was like, and it was pretty absurd, but like it was wrestling, any wrestling. It's Lucha Underground. Loved Lucha Underground. Just wrestling in general. If it's in front of me, I'll watch it.
Man, I loved Lucha Underground. That first season was so good. But like, I still think about it like, it's as weird as it is to say, because it's so good. But every time I think back on Lucha Underground, I think of Will Muertes' pants, like, because they just reminded me like he was wearing pajamas because they were like white striped, and I'm just like, what is this? I don't know why that always sticks out to me, but it's
kind of that classic luchador look, like Mil Mascaras kind of like. I don't know, in the cinematography about it, because I remember like I never pushed my kids to watch wrestling, but I remember my youngest at the time wanted to watch Lucha Underground, probably just because it was a little more colorful and a little more cinematically shot. And so yeah, no, if it was wrestling, I'd watch it. And I just sort of kept at it, and then moved up to Edmonton here, started going to pay-per-views, went to a few local shows, and kind of worked my way into running a backyard wrestling in a bar company for a better part of, well, I wouldn't say a decade, but probably 6 to 8 years. So,
well, I've definitely got some questions to ask you about that then. So, are you not from Edmonton originally, or are you from the
No, I grew up in a small town in Araisti here, Vegreville,
okay.
home of the world's biggest Ukrainian Easter egg. So my parents, I was born
number 07779.
Oh, you got it memorized. Wow.
I work for the bank, so I have everything.
But no, my parents were, I was born here, and at age 5 we moved there because my mother was a small town girl, my dad was a city guy, and the compromise was Vegreville, essentially close to the city still, but far enough away not to be in the city. So yeah, grew up in Vegreville and then moved up here when I was 18, just before I turned 19. So
okay, so 18-year-old kid comes into Edmonton, starting really your adult life. How did you start deciding, like, hey, I'm going to start going to wrestling shows, the independent shows, and really kind of get involved in the wrestling scene?
Well, it really started with, like, I wanted to watch pay-per-views, and someone I worked with said, oh yeah, just go down to, I think it's the old Rebar at the time. It's down on White Ave. I don't know what it is now because I'm an old dad, doesn't go out to bars, but went out to watch this. And so I'm watching this, and the whole pay-per-view ends, and all of a sudden 2 guys start fighting. And I'm like, what's going on here? And the one guy goes, oh yeah, that happens all the time. That's Cal. He wrestles people. And I was like, what? So is this a real fight or is this wrestling? He's like, no, they're wrestling. And kind of intrigued and watched it and everything, and then went for another one, and then watched him do it again with another person, and just kind of thought to myself, this is the inner Paul Heyman in me. I approached him. I said, well, I'd like to propose to you. Why don't we start a company out of this, and we get a belt made, and we get a handful of guys, and we start wrestling after these pay-per-views. So long story short, basically that bar and the bar we were at after, they were just pirate. I can't even say it properly. Pirating. pirating
Pirating?
the pay-per-views, some illegal streams. So they got busted. And we were just sort of thinking, well, the guy who I was wrestling was part of the death metal scene. He was a death metal lead singer. And I said, kind of brought it to like, well, why don't we do it in the venues when people are singing, one band setting up, the others taking down. And so, yeah, we moved to music venues, and we were basically, there's a live mic there and everything, the sound system. So they play music and we come out, and with no ring, we just use weapons, tables, ladders, chairs, barbed wire, thumbtacks, and wrestle on cement in front of metalheads or punks, whatever venue we were at. So.
Well, this explains a lot about how you have such good musical knowledge now, Beth, I guess. So that helps out a little.
Oh, yeah. I will literally listen to anything from like old country, old blues, all the way to, I obviously have kids, so current pop. I listen to everything.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I've got now my 3.5-year-old daughter who just likes listening to Runaway to Mars by Talk over and over again. That's what it feels like. So
yeah, that's a bad thing about kids, is they will beat the hell out of a song.
Oh God. Yeah. No, I thought I was bad at listening to a song over and over again, but apparently my daughter has got me beaten when it comes to that. But so you're going around, you're between shows, like in terms of like musical acts and everything, you come out, music, no ring or anything, but you guys beat the shit out of each other over and over again with like weapons and just hit each other on concrete. So how did that eventually end then? Because I mean, that sounds like it would actually be pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like, well,
it wasn't.
The gentleman in question had worked with, actually now that they're back now, Can-Am when they were in Edmonton, he'd worked with them a bit. He'd attended one of the Bruce and Keith Hart camps, that like Jericho, not the same one as Jericho and Storm, but like one of those type things, and got into wrestling, wrestled a little, but music was his thing and sort of stuck to that, but he kept kind of coming back to wrestling. So he trained us, and no knock on him. He knew what he knew. And it wasn't great. It literally was backyard in a bar, but the people got behind it. And, we started working on characters and stories, and we had interweaving stories. And like we're in a death metal venue, and me and the bad guys were like, I had this group of hip hop guys that were legitimate, like hip hop rappers in town. So what better bad guys for death metal fans or metalheads than rappers? So played off that, and we did quite well. It came to the point where instead of us wrestling around the bands, we'd have like a band or two around the intermission, and we were just wrestling for probably 5 or 6 matches. And we were doing quite well, but the draw was obviously music and the wrestling. And one of the old ring announcers for RCW came out to a show and was watching it. And the one thing I will preface about this whole thing is it was illegal, essentially, because at the time, Edmonton Wrestling was part of the Edmonton Combative Sports Commission. And so you need to have a wrestling license, and to have a wrestling license, you need to have a ring, and you need to pay the commission. And because we had none of that, according to the AGLC, which, governs the bars, we weren't allowed whatsoever. So there was times where we have to hop from bar to bar to it was essentially Fight Club, but backyard wrestling.
It's underground. You don't want the cops to find
out. We were just trying to wrestle. We didn't know how, and we couldn't afford. We were told $2,000 or $5,000 for wrestling training, and with MPW or another outfit in town. So we just did our own thing. Well, I'm in the back, and someone comes back and says someone's asking for the promoter, and I look at Cal, and I'm, oh crap! Like they finally found us. And I'm like, okay. I look at the guys, and everybody's losing their mind. I'm like, I'll just go talk to him. Let's go figure out what it is. So, pardon me. I go back or out to the front, and there's just this gentleman standing there. He's like, "Hi, I'm Charlie Murch." And I was like, okay. And I'm very, guarded at the time, thinking, okay, I'm from the AGLC or whatever. I'm going to bust you. He said, well, I'd like to offer you a proposition. I'd like you to come be a ring announcer for the wrestling company I work for. I was like, okay. And he goes, well, I work for RCW. And what he wanted to be an authority figure, like a commissioner or something. And I think Steven had told him, or someone had told him, well, if you go find a replacement for you as the ring announcer, we'll bump you up to another position of some sort. So he invited me to come ring announce. And I went and did one show, and then went and did another. And everything was well, and went and worked for RCW, Real Canadian Wrestling. And what happened was he wasn't getting that position, so he started trying to, he had me actually just standing on the floor one show, just announcing the sponsors, and then he did the ring announcing. And then they just kind of came to a point where I don't know what happened, but they said, we want you to be the ring announcer. And so I was a ring announcer for RCW for probably almost or 2 years, I would think. And that's how I got into actual wrestling. And once I got into real wrestling, met these people, understood the respect, understood that you needed to train, understood the ring, everything about it. I realized why we're getting chased. People are trying to find us. This is dumb. I said to the guys, look, how about you come train with RCW? They were doing some training before shows. I said, come train with RCW if you want to wrestle. I'm just going to close down this company. And, we walked away from it. At the time we had a Wildcat made belt, Wildcat belts. It's made the United States Championship and a few TNA championships and stuff. So we did well for ourselves. We had a belt, but at the end of the day, it was time to move on and be part of something real. I didn't talk about it for so many years because I felt it was very disrespectful to the industry. But, you realize some people get in, like Mick Foley, for instance, or the Hardys, they got in doing that backyard kind of stuff to make themselves to get an opportunity, right? So, yeah, at that point in time, EBW was dead, and I joined RCW full-time as a ring announcer.
So that was the name of the
yes,
EBW?
EBW. It was originally Edmonton Bar League Wrestling because we just wanted to sound like ECW, of course.
Right. EB
and yeah, EBW. And then at one point I said, okay, well, now we have this nice belt. We want to look a little better. Let's call it. And the only thing I could figure out was Extreme Brutality Wrestling. And so that's what it changed to. And yeah.
Got a couple quick questions that people have been kind of asking here, but I'll start with this one. Do you still have this belt?
I want the belt. I don't have the belt. One of the people, actually, the only person that stayed in wrestling, and he's not currently part of it, but I don't know if you've heard of Maxon Flexwell from the PWA.
Yeah, Maxon Flexwell, yes.
Yeah, so Maxon was one of my hip hop guys.
Okay.
And at the time, yeah, and at the time, we started doing well for ourselves, but I didn't have a lot of money. I was going through a separation, all sort of stuff, all my finances sort of tied up, and Maxton, basically pitched in money to get it made. And when I went to give him money to buy the belt back because I wanted to keep it, he just wanted to keep it. And I mean, he got it made. They went to the effort, him and his partner, Locution Revolution is their hip hop band or whatever you want to call it, duo. They wanted to keep it, and I couldn't really say no. So I've had it, in my house for brief periods of time, but it's Maxton's. He really wants to keep it. I might maybe remake it, or one of these days, Maxton, if you're watching, the world's your oyster, man. I want to buy that because I do want to put it up on the wall. I mean, for all intent and purposes, it was looking back at it, it was a very important part of my life. And it was, it was my way to shine creatively, and I still want to have it, but unfortunately, it's not here. It's about 20 blocks that way. So,
a good question here that came from the Canadian Goose. Did you draw fans even though these shows were illegal? How did you promote and still get people in the building?
Well, see, it was promoted initially as a music show.
And you just tag yourself on, kind of.
Yeah, and we just tag ourselves on. And then once the core demographic of all, metal scene and a punk scene is much like a wrestling scene where there's, hardcore fans that are always going out to the shows. And once the core demographic understood, well, they just come out to it, right? It was, once we were running our own, and we'd still
had to jump from bar to bar kind of a thing. Cause you said there's at times they were coming for you. So you had to try to figure out where to go.
Yeah. And that's where there was a couple towards the end where we had to cancel, and we had a lot of sort of disappointed people because it just ended up being we had one band and it's done. And that was kind of when, there's a few months there where I was doing both. And that's where I realized this is the way to go. To learn from people that have learned properly, that have been doing this, pardon me, for years, that the actual pro wrestling this is the way to go.
So approximately what year was that then where you've decided you're I'm going to hang up this old, EB dub and then move into
that? Happened all 2010, 2011, because that's when I started with RCW. And we actually started all that wrestling probably around 2003. And then I had a brief period where I broke my back, where we were tobogganing, of all things.
Okay.
best Canadian way to break your back. Not wrestling, as everyone usually assumes, but I broke my back and had to recover for a year. So we had about a year off, and I came back in a non-wrestling role as sort of the authority figure. And then, I got the bug to get back in there, and I felt good enough to get back in there. So a dude with broken back, was in there falling on tables and wrestling on concrete, but I just loved it so much, right? It was
So were you Thaddeus Archer III back then, or like when you were wrestling at that time, or like
no,
other incarnations prior to this?
I initially was Mad Mac, an insane mental patient. Then when I was the authority figure, I was Mad Mac Mayhem, which was basically that, but now had his stuff together, and it sounded like McMahon. And then I also played a character called Mr. Anarchy, who wore a Tenablus mask, so luchador mask with the V, covered my face entirely. And I was doing both of these at the time because we just needed some extra guys. And what I took it as is I took an old sports jacket that was plaid, similar to the one I gave you, and I spray painted a gold anarchy symbol on the back. And I basically just came out and announced myself Mr. Kennedy style, but I mixed it up with Road Dogg. So I'd be, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Anarchy Productions proudly presents to you the soon-to-be EBW champion of the world, like, Mr. Anarchy. And I turn around and point to the jacket, Anarchy. So it was a total knockoff, but fans loved it. And that was actually what got me, the ring announcing position with Charlie Murch there, is that he saw me do that and was like, okay, there's a guy that can do the ring announcing for me. So
yeah, that was actually really good to hear. Actually, that was really nice. I still have that jacket, by the way, but now I kind of want to go up and like spray paint like an A on the back of it, like my tribute to you.
Yeah, you can actually, believe it or not, there's a poster I have here on the wall, and I did wrestle one match for RCW as Mr. Anarchy. So
so back then, so you're talking, so this would have been closer towards, because I mean RCW has been around for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Did you know a guy at the time? His name was Dante Priest, not Damian Priest, but Dante Priest. He would have wrestled for RCW.
Yeah, he was Dante Priest. Vaguely, but I think that was a little later on, wasn't it? Like 2000.
No, it was one of the first ones there. So it may have actually been prior to this, which the only reason I bring it up is because though I haven't talked to him in a long time, he was one of the guys, his name is Rich, started WrestleSoda with me, and then I just kind of took over. It was just me after that point. So
it sounds familiar. Maybe he was just prior to my time, because when I started with RCW is when they first came into Edmonton. They were working the whole area around, and then they got in with the Edmonton Combative Sports Commission and TA3.
You know what? I'm just gonna put this out there. That would just be a cool logo to see, like the TA3, but the A is the Anarchy logo, and it's just like.
But I can't ruin these amazing suits. Come on, man.
No, I'm talking about a T-shirt for us, like simpleton incels that we are.
Humanoids.
Yeah, to us humanoids. But then okay, so how did that? So you say you like doing stories, like, do you like a good vignette or vignette as you'll pronounce it because you're actually pronouncing it correctly, or the storytelling aspects of wrestling are the most important things to you. So how did going from wrestling and then kind of taking really on to becoming a manager and then starting something like the Archer Report come along?
Oh, well, I mean, eventually I was working for RCW as a ring announcer, and Tex Gaines had started Force Pro Wrestling, and I talked with him quite a bit. We always had chats, and he said, there's more to you, but I refused, as a ring announcer, I refused to give myself a gimmick or be anything more than what was happening in the ring. Because in my mind, ring announcer was like, you're out there, you do I had to have like the suit, the white shirt, nothing, all black. I just wanted to be the traditional ring announcer, not take away from the action in the ring. But he said, you have a mind, you have a character. I'm starting a company. What do you want to be? Give me a character. You can be a manager. And so I started with him, and it wasn't until years later that I actually started the Archer Report, after Force had sort of come and gone, and I was back with RCW. When I came back, I was still with RCW as a ring announcer, so there was a bit of that juxtaposition for a bit there. And then I eventually told Steven, look, I am Thaddeus now. This is what I want to do, and I need to do that in RCW. So continued that in RCW, and I think, yeah, there was a point where there was like a war for RCW, and I just didn't have any clients. I couldn't quite gel or find anyone. And I took a few months off, and then I came back and just tried being like a backstage correspondent for this whole thing. And I was just doing it on my phone, like selfie style, just holding it like that. If you look back, I've shared some because it's been the 5-year anniversary just came up in the fall. So sharing some of the older videos I did. And so I was doing that a little bit, and then everybody started to kind of like it. So I was like, okay, well, let's make this into like a little YouTube thing. So it's a one-stop shop. And then it kind of kept going. And then we started adding cameras to it and mics, and it just doesn't stop.
You're constantly growing whenever you have a project, right? Like that's the point of a project. You start small and you evolve slowly over time until it's become something crazy.
Yeah.
But so you were starting that then. So you said you went to Force, but then you came back to RCW, and then that was really where you kind of evolved Thaddeus. You're like, I'm no longer really a ring announcer. I'm a manager. I have my own stories that I want to tell, things like that.
Yeah, no, it was Force. I mean, I enjoyed it there. Tex was really good to me. It just, things didn't work out, and, money, this and that, and decided to step back for a bit. And then he took Force up to, I believe, Grand Prairie for a bit. But yeah, I didn't want to, I gotten so accustomed after a year of being Thaddeus, I didn't want to let it go. I knew this was everything I wanted to be. And so, I told Steven, look, and at the time in Force and in RCW, I was working with Dick Richards, and I'm like, Dick's here. I want to work with him, continue to work with him. I need to be Thaddeus. So he brought me in, and then I took on Evan Adams and Scott Lee Crew, were known as the 8-bit bastards at the time. They had a female manager for a bit, and then she left, so I took over from there. And then, from there, there were tons of people. I had my first stable was the First Family, which at the time Vince Austin was the booker, and he was a big fan of Memphis, and so he dubbed my stable the First Family, similar to Jimmy Hart's stable, the First Family in Memphis. So I had a motley crew of guys, and of course then Dick turned on me and became a crowd favorite because, how could you not love Dick? And then who was he was known as Zarif Metrovic at the time, but my good friend here, Aiden Adams, he turned on me, and then just kind of fizzled out after that. And then eventually I was asked to be basically the authority figure for RCW, like I was asked to be the commissioner, but I decided to dub a general manager just for something a little more poise. And was general manager for RCW for about a year there, and then from I got the call from Mr. Sorokin, would you like to come be the commissioner of PWA, and moved on to PWA for, I think it was about a year and change until the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Oh, I got to say, it was really cool because like my whole story of coming into the Alberta wrestling scene was like right in 2016. And that was right around the time of like the Battle of the Dome for the first time. And then much later on after that, going into people like Clandestine for the first time and seeing Evan Adams, like you were talking about, because I know by that point you had not managed him for many, many years. So just to hear like how it all kind of started and then like build my own story around what I've known from you, I was like, oh, that's really cool to hear all these different names. So your first match that you've actually did as like a manager, though, that was in MPW then?
MPW? I never worked for that's the only.
I'm sorry, not MPW. Sorry, Force Pro Wrestling. Sorry, Force Pro Wrestling.
Force Pro. I don't think I did a match. I think I'm trying to like my first match. Forced into as a manager was probably me, and I was managing Zach Mercury at the time, everybody's favorite, Universal friend, and then Dano Burns. Who I miss dearly. Love you, Dano. And we were facing Matt Hart, Steven Styles, and he who shall remain nameless, wrestler that we can't talk about anymore. Nonetheless, we were, because I was managing two guys, they put me in and wrestled a bit in there. Then that nameless wrestler I then did a one-on-one match with, he absolutely just cleaned my clock and beat the floor with me until Vince Austin came to save me. And then, of course, the next month, Vince Austin went and became Colonel Austin in another company, so I lost that client. But I haven't done many matches. I mean, the one recently with me and Pride and TJ Cannon versus Paralia and Dr. Kyoto, that was like my first match in 5 years. As a manager, I've only probably done like 5 matches.
You know, it's actually kind of funny because I just had this message earlier. So how did Dad feel after his match with Dr. Kyoto back in November? Because, like you said, you hadn't done many matches yourself, and this was an actual match where you got into the ring, and that whole storyline that you had there with Dr. Kyoto and the first, like the loser retires, or at least within LPW as a manager, there's just a beautiful storyline that I got to pay attention to, at least from down south here. But I had to look up and be like, oh, I wish I was there for that because that was so cool.
That will forever remain a very it's hard. It was really bittersweet because I knew Kyoto, we'll call him Takeshi, was leaving. And I mean, putting everything aside here, he approached me and said, look, you're the person I want. Takeshi is very, very old school, very old school. Grew up, watching, loving wrestling, moved to Calgary, Alberta to get into wrestling, moved from Japan to Calgary, Alberta to get into wrestling. And he said, I have to leave the territory on my back. Archer son, I want you to pin me. And for me, that was just such a great honor. I love Takeshi to death. We worked together. I kept wanting to work with him for years, and then we got to work together in PWA, and it was just so great to be able to do promos together. I kind of wish we had like a little more of a program, or we had a little longer time to lead up to that, but it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was rushed. It was just, we were on a timeline, and for what it was perfect. I loved everything about it, minus, my wrestling skill in the ring, but otherwise everything was great. And when all was said and done, the end of the night and the ring was torn down, I shared a beer with Dr. Kyoto and, just kind of exchanged pleasantries and hugged and told each other we loved each other. And just, I know he'll be back. I know he'll come out this way once in a while if I get a chance. He's gone to Vancouver, so I look forward to him getting on the scene there, especially with all the great stuff happening out there with Boom and New and WrestleCore. But, yeah, I miss him. It was so tough. Like it was great and it was fun, but at the end of the day, it was pretty emotional. Like just to, the guy has such a big heart, man. He just loves wrestling so much, and like that hits me right there. So I'll miss him.
Oh yeah, no, I was super happy to hear actually that he was going out to Vancouver though, because like you said, like if he actually wants to be a part of the Vancouver scene, I think that could only really help and add to the Vancouver scene because Dr. Kyoto is just amazing here. A couple of quick questions I think that are pretty good, but I'll put this one up first here though from Goose. So one of the things that he appreciated about watching Thad's match recently is he wrestled like a manager. You didn't suddenly burst out lucha moves or power moves. It was just all about being a well-told story, which, you know what, I have to give to you, if that's actually going to be the case here, is that you didn't try too much. You did what you had to do, and you could just tell your own story, right? Because like you're a manager, right? You're not doing Hurricane Ranas.
I mean, it all goes back to, and I know I beat this to death, but I've literally watched everything I could about Bobby the Brain Heenan, and when he did have to wrestle, like you just look at the Weasel Suit match alone, like he wrestled like a manager. Like I don't need, my job is to shine the light on everybody else. And that is where I get my validation, what makes me me. And so I don't need to go out there and do big moves. I know, I went to Clandestine, we went over some stuff, and there was one sort of bigger one that I wanted to try, but I couldn't. I actually did it right the first time, and then my brain just broke and I couldn't wrap my head around it. But I was very glad to, like, for what I did. I'm a perfectionist, so if I watch it back, I'll see even as a manager, I could have done that a little better. So.
Yeah, being critical of yourself, though, I think that's like one of the hardest things, is that you'll always be your biggest critic, right? Because to you go out there and you know what could have been, you know what you could have done differently, you know what you were scared to try and all that kind of stuff. But everybody else, right? You went out there and you told your story, and that's what they know that story as, right? So as long as they enjoy it, that's super awesome. And I personally am with you. Like, I love wrestling. I think wrestling moves are fantastic. I'm very respectful of all the people who can do literally anything in the ring. But to me, I think the most important thing is always going to be the storytelling that you can tell, and getting people emotionally attached into a match, right? And you really don't need to be able to do an amazing wrestler to do something like that. You can really just kind of get it off with a couple of things, as long as you show your emotions, you show your passion for it, right?
Absolutely.
I like this one here, question that I get on every single one from Shout here. How has the all-time comedy classic Ready to Rumble starring Sting influenced your career?
I mean, it's an amazing movie. It's a timeless classic. It's Jimmy the King, like WWJK.
What would Jimmy or what would
What?
King do?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I love Royal Rumble. It's actually funny. I was recently thinking I kind of need to rewatch it because it's been a few years. I'm weird in a sense where unless it's I think you should leave, I can't rewatch something for about a year or two. I just want to like watch it fresh again. And the only difference with that is I think you should leave because that just somehow I can just continually watch that over and over again. It's in my brain. But I mean, it's WCW, and WCW is what made me fall in love with the wrestling story. So there you go.
There you go. I it was really funny because I told you how I grew up. I was like the WWF kid, and I was still the WWF kid when Ready to Rumble came out. But I was such a mark for this movie that I didn't care. I didn't really know all the WCW guys that were in the movie. I was like, screw it, it's just so good. I just have to watch this over and over again.
And it's got Canyon in it, and who better than Canyon, right? So.
Here's another thing I would just like to bring up, and I made this kind of joke a little bit yesterday, but you and me have both apparently grew up watching and loving the same movie, The Wrong Man, starring Dave Foley and Jennifer Tilly and everything like that. I legitimately don't know if I've ever met another person who's ever seen that movie.
I have you beat. So as a teenager, I had that poster up on my wall. The poster, like the VHS cover of like him as like with the mugshot or whatever. I had that poster on my wall. And when I met Dave Foley, I told him how much of a fan I was of The Wrong Guy. And he kind of looked at me funny for a second. I said, and of course, all the kids in the hall, but I felt like Wrong Guy should have had more love. And he said, thank you. And he was very gracious, but I think he was kind of taken back at the fact that maybe I was the only person to ever ask him about it after the fact, other than the press after the movie or during the movie. But
I personally think it's comedic gold. I just love when he's sitting there and he's like covered in blood and he just screams for like 30 seconds. Ah! Ah!
He's got the knife in his hand and he runs out and
he like puts it on his clothes and then he looks at his clothes like, ah!
Well, like he just does one sleeve and then they cut and then the door opens and he's literally covered like he's just touched himself.
And I like how he runs out into the hallways holding the knife and he's just like, no, he's like doing this and they're screaming. He's like, no.
And the best part, what I love about all that, and especially because of his scream, is everybody calls him a woman. Like he's a man in a suit, but everyone's like, what's wrong with that woman? But just because his scream is so visceral and female or effeminate that there's so much I love about that movie.
It's like legit. It's just like, if you haven't seen it, it's just a gem. It's just a hidden gem.
What other movie has a love interest that has that's narcoleptic? Like they'll be sharing a special moment and she just falls. Like they're in the field talking and she just falls. And like there's just so much, and it's got some of my favorite. Like I'm a big SCTV guy,
Me too.
comedy guy. So it's got like wow, I had the name in my head from SCTV.
Joe Flaherty.
Joe Flaherty, sorry. And you notice like other little like who's the bad guy? Is it Colm Meaney or something? Like he's a pretty big serious Canadian actor. Like he's in lots of dramas and stuff like that. And in that he's just the most ridiculous hitman ever. Like
I don't want a helicopter.
Yeah.
We've already ordered. Cancel it. We can't cancel it. Fine.
Okay, if you let one of the hostages go, we'll cancel the helicopter. I didn't even want a helicopter.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Thank you for knowing that. I could literally sit and talk about that movie all day. But yeah, it was great. And it was my first introduction to Jennifer Tilly as well, who went on to become the bride of Chucky, which I was blown away by. But yeah, I don't know. It was great. I love the first time she finds out that she's narcoleptic and they're driving and he's just sitting in the passenger seat and she like collapses onto the wheel and he's just like, look, he's like, Lynn.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Hello. It's nonchalant as they're driving into the ditch, but
all right, let's get back a little bit to wrestling here because I have a couple more questions that I want to ask you. So you've been involved now, especially in the independent scene across Alberta, whether or not it be RCW or BEBW. I'm going to make sure I get that right. But you've been around for a very long time. What are some of your favorite stories that you've actually had the honor of being involved in around Alberta?
Like stories pertaining to me, or
just something that you've been involved in, whether or not it's something that you've just loved that you've got to be a part of, or like that it was actually involving you or you as a manager. What would you say are some of your biggest stories?
I know one that'll always stick with me was having, when I was managing the 8-Bit Bastards, was having the opportunity to work with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Literally just like the nicest human alive. And our first night was in Red Deer, and our locker room, like, it was this weird where we had this hall in the front, and then the locker room was like this whole big corral, like big open dome that they ran horses in. So like we're changing in the corral and then coming out to the hall, but we're sitting back there with Hacksaw, and he starts like right off the hop. He goes, "Boys, I've already filled my bump cart, so just so you know, there's no bumping tonight, but we're gonna have a lot of fun." And we had a lot of fun. He he socked me on the ring apron. He did the 3-point stance tackle to me. And then, the next night we were doing one in Edmonton, and I worked in a warehouse at the time, and all the stock crates came in with this like brace of this like 2x4. And so we'd like pull out the nails and pull out this like perfect 2x4 that was a perfect length that just had a couple nail holes in the end. And we always kept that as dunnage around. And I thought to myself, as I was driving back from Red Deer, I should go grab those for Hacksaw. He can sign them and make a mint. And so I literally brought in the next day in Edmonton like 30 2x4s. And I said, "Hacksaw, here, you sign these and make yourself some money." And he was kind of floored. I said, "Okay, thank you." Matches, everything's done. It's the end of the night, and he has one in his hand, and he walks up to me and he says, "I'd like to sign this for you." And I was like, "Well, it's funny. I don't like signed memorabilia. I worked at a hotel for 10 years, and it was beaten into us never to ask people to sign anything. And at the same time, we also had to fight all the people sneaking in the hotel to try to like get people to sign things. And so I was like, sorry, like, I don't really collect signed stuff." And he kind of looked at me very seriously, and he said, "Brother, you just made me a lot of money tonight, and this is the only way I can think to repay you. Can I please write something on this 2x4 and give it to you?" And I had to, I relinquish and say, "Of course." And once I realized it was, it was his way to pay me back, because he must have made, I don't know how much. He was selling them for like 30 or 40 bucks a piece.
Jesus.
And so,
This is a 2x4.
Yeah, so he gave me a signed 2x4, good luck and best wishes.
I mean, that seems like a deal these days with the gas price of wood, but I mean,
yeah. No, I thought about it, but so that was always he was just such a, like, you look at a man that was one of the biggest guys in the WWF, WWE, traveled the world, and he just had such a great heart. Like, you meet a lot of wrestlers, they say don't meet your heroes. You meet some guys in with wrestling, everybody has egos. And so you meet some people and you go, like, okay, I get that's how they are. But Hacksaw just felt like your uncle, or felt like your grandpa, or felt like your dad. He was just the nicest guy in the world. And I mean, like, to this day, when somebody asks, who's your favorite name to work with, Hacksaw, man. Like, go follow social media. He's just like the sweetest, nicest dude in the world.
Dude, that's such a great story to hear, because like sometimes you'll hear stories, especially about people that get brought in. Not everybody, it turns out to be, like the big hero that you kind of had them in your mind of as a kid. But it's great to hear someone like Hacksaw Jim Duggan was just as sweet and cool as he seems to have been on screen too, right? Because growing up, especially a fan of the Royal Rumble, like, of course I know and love Hacksaw Jim Duggan, right? So
first winner.
Exactly. Now, obviously, there's been, like, especially in your case here, like, you've worked with a lot of other big names. Are there some other names out there that you would just love to just be like, hey, shout out to these guys, because they're actually just super awesome people?
Oh, God. No, my brain's not going to work. Well, yeah, I mean, another one of the big ones was Jake. And it was funny, CWE was doing a tour, and they're very kind enough to have me work with Jake. Not work with Jake, but work against Jake, because Jake was essentially the manager ringside for the good guys, and I was the manager for the bad guys. And on that tour of like 30 some dates, he only gave 2 people the DDT, and I was one of them. So I always take that as like something important to me. I know a lot of the guys were like, "Well, he's kind of a jerk," but he's just kind of a gruff guy. And when I approached him after and said, "How was everything?" he said, "You did a good job, kid," and slapped my shoulder. And I took that as good compliment, thumbs up. But he was great. I managed Sin Bodhi, aka Kazarni, for a match. He was amazing. Brother, of course, our close friend Cobra Kai. Hi, Cobra Kai. And I'm just trying to think who else.
There's got to have been so much. I remember that tour that Jake came down from, and my God, I remember after the intermission, he had like a little bit of a talk where like he was going to tell a story, and he went for like 20 minutes, but like everybody was just on the edge of their seats.
Oh, yeah.
Like Jake the Snake Roberts is legitimately one of the best storytellers. If you just hear this guy tell a story, it just even for fun, just something that happened 25 years ago in the car, it is an invigorating tale he can tell you, because he
Oh,
tells
yeah.
stories so well. Oh my god.
I remember when we had Kevin Nash in for an event, there was like a training. We were having a training camp before, but it was basically just him sitting and telling us stories. And like, that's another guy you could just like listen to for hours. Like, he just telling road stories or telling, you know, thoughts about how wrestling should work and this and that. It's funny because like you find, especially more nowadays in the last few years, or even just before the pandemic, most younger guys don't go to the veterans as much anymore. And that's like not a knock on them. It's just maybe the way the industry sort of changed. Whereas I will like go directly for, like, I remember sitting in the back and talking to Smith Hart at RCW's first show in Calgary, and just like sitting there and listening to him for, other than the time I had outside, I just sat and listened to Smith talk. Or, you know, like anybody I could, even someone like recently the second Battle of the Dome is, you know, talking with Duke Durango, who's a guy I just always wanted to manage, and obviously didn't get a chance, but I got to work a show with him and, you know, listen to him and pick his brain. Or Andy Anderson, and just anybody I can find that has that, you know, Robbie Royce out, and the Pitbull Robbie Royce out in Winnipeg. Love him. These guys that have been in it for longer than others, there's so much they can teach you just by telling you a simple story. They're so invaluable that I'm just a sucker for the stories of wrestling. I'm a sucker for anything wrestling, obviously.
All right, we got a couple quick questions here left before the end of the day. A couple of ones that I would love to ask, but first question I want to ask is, who do you consider to be your mentor? Because, like you said, you've taken from lots of different people. You know, you've studied so many different people, Bobby the Brain Heenan and stuff like that. But like, who would you consider to be your mentor? Like the person you go to if you have a question or something to that effect in wrestling.
It's kind of just been. So there's. Takeshi's great. You know, I'd ask him a little bit, but he's sort of a different kind of manager, and there's obviously a little bit of a language gap. So I talked with him a little bit, but I never really had like a manager that could be my mentor. And I've had obviously certain wrestlers over the years that I've worked with. Often when I'm working with them, they're teaching me things. And I think like at this point, for the like length of time, I'd have to say MRB. Like there's a guy what's that?
A great choice.
Well, it's funny because he's younger than me, but that he's an old man. He's been in wrestling for so long. He's an old man in wrestling, like mind wise. And obviously, you know, being taught by TJ, and TJ being his close friend, and TJ teaching him about the industry as well. And then TJ having that passed down from Stampede, and then him working with, you know, people that did work in Stampede and then came to work in PWA and stuff. He has this wealth of knowledge, but this center balance to him, that this full understanding of wrestling, and there's no ego with that man. And he just, yeah, if I could say anybody is my mentor, it's got to be him, because I can always go to him and bounce something off of him and get a legitimate answer back. And literally I can go to him with anything. So yeah, to break the veil a little bit, I mean, he's helped me so much understand, you know, the biggest thing with going to PWA is that I was addressed, or, you know, brought in as a commissioner and as a face, as a good guy. And I'd never done that as Thaddeus before. And I didn't know how to wrap my head around it. And he helped me wrap my head around it. And also just understanding from a full wrestling standpoint, like I can make stories. I can make little stories in the Archer Report and, you know, play little things and have this like story build over a period of time. But to understand how it works in the ring as a wrestling company, to interact with the promos for long-term storyline, that man understands it fully, and how to leave little breadcrumbs. Whereas when you watched with, you know, when people went back and realized it looked like I was being an inept commissioner, but it wasn't. I was being an inept commissioner. I was just screwing stuff up on purpose so that I could get Michael Allen Richard Clark to be my PWA champion. So, and he's taught me all that. And it's just a guy I can always go to ask anything. And I don't think I've ever had a person that I could always go to at any time of day or night and ask literally anything without having to worry about being judged or getting heat or anything like that, or ego. MRB.
It's just there to help, kind of a thing.
He's our savior for a reason.
No, he's a great guy. I've had my couple of conversations, like I've had my wrestles over with him, but just even in person, I've had a couple of conversations with the guy. Just the nicest guy. Every single time I get a chance to speak with him, he's just so nice. Couple of questions here to finish this up before the end of the night here. This one I think is actually a really important one. What would you recommend as being the best piece of advice you can give to somebody who is looking to break into the independent wrestling scene?
I think the biggest thing is dedication. Is put in the time, put in the time, put in the time. Always be there every show. Always be there early to help. Always be there late to help. Put in the time, because I've watched people who were, essentially ring crew eventually become wrestlers. I've watched people who were ring announcers like Goose eventually become a wrestler. I've watched people finally get a chance to be a ring announcer when that's all they wanted to do for a few years. And the biggest thing is you just make sure you leave that 1 or 2 times a month always open for it, and always be there. Because if you're a face, they're always, around, being dependable. What's going to happen is they're going to, some point in time, they're going to say, hey, do you want to do this? And then you get your shot. So, go volunteer. LPW is still looking for a few volunteers. Come out to the show and volunteer, and just be there. And the more you're there, and the more you help out and be respectful, and you will eventually get a chance, basically. And if you do want to wrestle, I preface with saying train first. Come out and, volunteer a bit, but go to clandestine, train with MRB. And yeah, that's most important than anything, is if you want to be a wrestler, train.
Yeah, and I believe he has if my memory isn't screwing with me right now, he has a training camp coming up on February 11th and 12th.
Yes.
In Edmonton.
The usual mini camp. And honestly, it's so much fun. It's funny because I've done a lot of training, but I never trained with MRB. And then I went to the school, and different trainers have different styles. A lot are it's like the Army, it's like bump drills. And MRB was the kindest on my body. And I'm 40 now, and it had been 41, and it had been 5 years since I'd done anything. And I walked out of there, I walked in there thinking, oh God, I'm going to be sore the next day. And the only thing I was sore from was all the squats, which that's the one thing you got to watch out with MRB is squats. But in the ring, he's so patient. He's, if you notice you're hurting yourself, he'll stop you and show you. Even if you just want to challenge yourself and say, I just want to see if I could be a wrestler or try it or be in the ring, go do one of these mini camps. It's a great way to do. I have a neighbor who our daughters play together, and he did one of the Force mini camps, and he still counts that as one of the best. He doesn't want to become a wrestler, but he still counts that as one of his best memories in his life, was going and training with MRB.
I really want to do it. I talk about it a lot about going up to one of these ones, and I was really tempted to go up for the February 11th one, but it just didn't work out in this case here. But even me as a person who just talks to wrestlers and goes to shows and everything like that, I want to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
I feel like I get away with a lot of stuff, being able to talk to people all day, every day, all these wrestlers, and I've still never gotten to take a proper bump. I feel like I've cheated the system somehow, because I've been around since 2016 now. So, but we are going to start wrapping it up a little bit here. But where can people find you? Tell us about your next shows. Where is Thaddeus Archer III these days?
So on Facebook and on Twitter, it's Thaddeus Archer III. On Instagram, it's Thaddeus Archer. I should have added the 3, but I didn't. And now it's like that. I know you can change it, but then I lose all my tags. And then, of course, on YouTube, was Thaddeus Archer III was a channel. We changed it a few years ago to TA3 TV in the hopes of adding a few more shows. Haven't found... There's been a few in the can, but Archer Report is usually out every Thursday. We've been on a bit of a hiatus. I will announce to you now as a hot exclusive. We're back on Thursday with a sequel to the Freaky Thad's Day, but in Love Pro Wrestling, a kind of double-sized little cinematic weird episode. So if anybody remembers, I think it was episode 58 or 50-something, but where a haunted Scott Steiner figure caused people to switch bodies. You will see a sequel to that coming this Thursday, and then from there we'll see where we go. Of course, Love Pro Wrestling, follow Love Pro Wrestling or Love Wrestling. Our sold out shows this weekend, but you can watch on Twitch for free. Shout out to Boris. If there's one person I want to thank and one person I want to tell other promoters and other wrestling companies to hire, Boris is the best play-by-play wrestling guy in North America, or at least in Canada. Hire that guy. He has taught me so much in my last year being color commentary to him. And just type in Thaddeus Archer III and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff.
Awesome.
I'm on TikTok even too, but it's usually just stupid videos of stuff with the kids or my pets. So
the real look behind the scenes there.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
That's the place to go. Is to
Well, that's the
TikTok.
things I try to like with different platforms is I try to alternate content. So you get like a little something different if you're following me on this, or a little something different if you see my Instagram stories. So
Perfect. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining me here today. I have, like I said, needed to bring you on here for years at this point, and I feel bad that it took me this long. But of course, I wanted to make sure that I was getting to the point where I had enough quality to be able to bring someone like you on. So I really appreciate you joining me here today. Since I started getting into the Alberta wrestling scene, you have been a name that I have followed literally since the beginning, and I always love watching your stuff. I always love watching the Archer Report, and I was very lucky to be having my own small little guest spot on the Archer Report a couple of months ago.
That Archer Report is for everybody. That's my biggest thing is I want to get everybody on the Archer Report. I like to say I'm like indie wrestling's gateway drug is I get you in and then you keep coming out to the shows and watching and following. So
it was so much fun, and like I'll be honest, like getting into this little cool position that I've got to be in here, doing like the interviews and all that kind of stuff. I've had such cool experiences being able to go backstage, thanks to people like you who brought me back there to record and to do small little like segments and everything like that. But even since then, other people just bring me backstage now because they're just like, Anthony's a cool guy, let's just bring him back here. So I thank you, man. It was seriously a lot of fun, and
of course,
the peek behind the curtain is always so much fun to see, especially in the world of wrestling, because it is such a hush old school mentality, especially even still to this day, into what I call the territories of Canada.
Territories of Canada.
But
alrighty.
All right, buddy. Well, you have yourself a wonderful night. I will put you over there. I will say my goodbyes, and then I'll send you a message here after, okay?
Archer out.
Cheers, buddy. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I had a really great time speaking with Thaddeus Archer III. I'm sure all of you are, just like me, a Thaddeus, a TA3 guy. I'm very excited to see for the future of Thaddeus and all the things that he's going to be doing. Love pro wrestling up in Edmonton, as I've said before, is doing such great work, especially over the last year. I know that they had hit their 1 year anniversary about a month and a half ago or something to that effect. And they've done such great stuff. I had the pleasure of going up to see 3 different Love Pro Wrestling matches here over the course of 2022. And I would love to go to even more here in 2023. So Edmonton, expect me more because I'm sure I'll be up. And I one of my things I've been wanting to do, like I said, in 2023 is just go to more wrestling shows in general. So starting off on Thursday, once again, I will be at Big Vision Wrestling's show here in Calgary. And then, of course, this Friday, if you guys there's the RCW shows and then LPW show here in Edmonton, which is going to be fantastic. If you guys are in the South Edmonton Commons near the Rec Room, make sure to go there. And it's just always a great time. So much love to all of you for tuning in here today. I will be back, I think, in 2 weeks. I have to work a night shift next Tuesday, unfortunately. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get an interview in. If I can, I will make sure to let you all know. Remember to check me out on social medias at Jupiter Vision, at WrestleSode on Twitter. You can also go to Instagram, which is WrestleSode, or Facebook.com/WrestleSode, where I like to keep everything. I do have a Discord where information does go up, but a lot of cool stuff is going to be coming down the works for me here in the next little bit. So expect me. If you guys liked what you saw, remember to hit that like button and subscribe, especially if you're on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that like button. It does help us out immensely. And a big thank you, of course, to the Canadian Wrestling Archive for having us on and being able to help continue to promote us for the last almost year at this point. It's been such a great thing to be a part of the Canadian Wrestling Archive and just seeing how that's been growing. I know that their Instagram, which we just created like 3 weeks ago, has already broken like 100 subscribers or followers on it. So it's been really great. So thank you to everybody. Much love to all of you. I will be back here, like I said, in a couple of weeks, at least in terms of WrestleSode, but I would love to do some streaming in between now and then. But you have yourself a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.